Let's take a look at the third and fourth assumption of previous ethics, those assumptions that uh, Jonas says are no longer true. Number three says this: the entity, for action in this domain, the entity man and his basic condition was considered constant in essence and not itself an object of reshaping techne. We'll come back to that. The fourth assumption, which no longer holds, according to Jonas, is that the good and evil about which action had to care lay close to the act, either in the praxis itself or in the immediate reach, and were not a matter for remote planning. This proximity of ends pertained to time as well as space. Let's just comment on that fourth one first. I mean, perhaps that's the most relevant to what we're doing, looking at the singularity in the more narrow sense of a creation of a superintelligence. And that is that Jonas is saying is that the effects in time, the effects of one's actions in terms of the duration of those consequences or the duration of those effects in time was really short. I mean, that was presumption. Is that ethics was about the here and now, as he says, about you and me now. And again, the idea was that the power of our actions was pretty weak, and in the sense that the effects of our actions really couldn't be thought to be anything that would be very long lasting. Like everything else that we created, it would have its day, and it would be wiped out. I mean, or the effects would peter out. His point is that at least when it comes to collective decisions or collective use of technology, and no doubt he was thinking especially about nuclear power and especially about nuclear weapons, that the effects of our actions are long lasting indeed. And so that in making decisions about, again, the creation of, the implementation of, the development of technology, we're making decisions that will affect human beings perhaps for the rest of the existence of the human race, which is certainly a difference, Jonas says. The kind of responsibility that humans have to acknowledge, at least in some of their decisions, kind of ethical responsibility is immense, and certainly different from anything that human beings really had to deal with before. The kind of responsibility that human beings had to acknowledge before is just it's different. Of course, number three is really part of that responsibility. This is one of the presumptions that the entity man and his basic condition was considered constant in essence and not itself an object of reshaping techne. Now, that may be put in kind of philosopher's language, but I think what he's saying there is that human beings presumed before the 20th century, basically, before the true advent of modern technology and its power, that human nature was a constant, that human beings were essentially what they were. They'd always been that way, and they always would be that way. Now, of course, Darwin proved that wrong, right? In the 19th century, proved that human nature was something that was in flux. And I wonder why, I don't know if Darwin's even mentioned in this essay, but that was certainly a difference, a huge difference in perspective in the 19th century when human beings realized that they had evolved from other creatures and that they were in an ongoing process of evolution as well. Although some people, I think, mistakenly believe that human evolution is over. I don't see any reason to believe that, or any good reason to believe that. But in any case, the point here, I think, though, is in the second part of what he says, that the presumption was that human nature, what it meant to be a human being, was not itself an object of reshaping techne. That is, was not something that was subject to technological intervention, which is a step beyond Darwin, obviously. There's one thing to say that human nature is an historical product and is itself in flux. It's another thing to say that human nature is subject to reshaping by human beings themselves, and that is one of the things that we'll see in the worries that philosophers have about the singularity is that the singularity will result in changes in what it means to be human. It may result in the extinction of the human race if we take the notion of the singularity seriously, which is something that we have to keep in mind, is that there's no philosophical or scientific consensus that anything like a singularity will ever happen in the way that some people imagine it. But certainly those who do imagine it happening, one of their worries is that human beings will either become extinct or they will be forced to adapt to the presence of a superintelligence by changing their own nature, basically to keep up with it. As we'll see, one of the related fields to sort of singularity studies is transhumanism, the notion that a singularity will bring with it so many changes to human life and even the human body, the human organism, or even transcending the human organism and things like uploading, mind uploading, that we will no longer be human in any kind of recognizable sense. We post-human, and certainly again, a related thought to the notion of a singularity happening is that it will inaugurate the post-human future in different ways. But Jonas was right there, thinking in terms not of computers and the singularity, but thinking in terms of social psychology, biological interventions that were becoming sort of on the horizon in terms of lifespan and genetic enhancements, perhaps, that were becoming imaginable in the early 70s. The notion that, well, it's just no longer true that human nature is a constant, if it ever was true. I mean, you just can't believe it anymore. I mean, the idea is that human nature changes and that we can take an active role in changing our own nature through our technology, that this is an ethical, well, this is, the new reality, and it poses ethical challenges. So, yeah, okay, there's a lot here. There's a lot to think about. I'm not going to try to cover everything here. You can read it yourself. It's fully understandable. However, it does seem to me that one of the most important things to talk about next is that sort of, what would a new ethics look like? That is, if it is true, if it is indeed true that our old ethics, the variety of ethical frameworks that we've inherited from basically pre-modern civilizations, pre-technological, in the sense of modern technology. Human beings have always had technology, right? He acknowledges that, but things have come to a head in terms of the development of the power of that technology. If it's indeed true that we need a new ethics, what would it look like? Well, one of the things to keep in mind is he said, here on page 39 is the new prominence of knowledge. Knowledge under these circumstances becomes a prime duty beyond anything claimed for it heretofore, and the knowledge must be commensurate with the causal scale of our action. That is, if the it's the old Spider-Man thing. With great power comes great responsibility, and with great responsibility, one of the responsibilities is to be able to have an idea of the effects of one's actions, of our actions. As we'll see, for various reasons, especially with Kant, who's very dear to the heart of Hans Jonas, knowledge is really not very important. That is, morality maybe wasn't simple, but it was based on principles that did not require extensive knowledge of the world or the effects of one's actions. And certainly, Jonas thinks that has changed. Knowledge is everything now, and the problem is that we can't know. We can't be sure of the effects of our actions, and what does that do to our ethical outlook?